All right, aloha everyone, and welcome to the 41st Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Holly Kalani. And today's discussion with the co-writer and lead actress from Americanish, Aizzah Fatima. My name is Anna Page. I'm the director of programming at the festival, and I'm really thrilled to present this discussion to you today. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping bits, and then I am going to introduce our program partner for this film, the Vilchick Foundation. This film is presented as part of our New American Perspectives program at HIFF in partnership with the Vilchick Foundation. This program is designed to spotlight the contributions of American immigrants to contemporary American cinema. It's a wonderful program, and we have a really exciting lineup this year of 5 films and 7 filmmakers that we're featuring as part of this program. As part of this program, as I mentioned, Aizzah is our feature filmmaker for the film Americanish. So before we get started, a couple of notes. One, this film is nominated for HIFF Audience Award, so please don't forget to vote. You can do that in person by ripping your ballot at the screening, or you can vote online in your watch.hiff.org app by using the 5-star system. Also, I do want to take a note to acknowledge that Hawaii is an indigenous space whose original people today are identified as Kanaka or Native Hawaiians, and we're so grateful to be able to present our festival in this land. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Elizabeth Boylan from the Vilchick Foundation.
Aloha and thanks, Anna. We're so thrilled to present the New American Perspectives program this year as part of HIFF41. As Anna mentioned, New American Perspectives puts a spotlight on foreign-born filmmakers celebrating the contributions of immigrant artists to cinema and media in the United States. The program centers the voices of immigrant and foreign-born artists through film screenings, panels, and filmmaker Q&As like this one with writer, actress, and comedian Aizzah Fatima. Since 2007, the Vilchick Foundation has partnered with HIFF to present a program that highlights and shares the work of immigrant filmmakers and creators with the festival's audiences. It's really special for us to be able to share this program in Hawaii, a place that has been so profoundly shaped by human migration and immigration. Our foundation was established in 2000 to help honor and celebrate the contributions of immigrants to the arts, culture, and society in the United States. And we do this through partnerships and programs like the New American Perspectives program at HIFF. So we're delighted to welcome Aizzah Fatima to this year's festival and to present her film Americanish at HIFF41. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Liz. So without further ado, I would like to welcome with us today Aizzah Fatima.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here with us. I think we're gonna go, there we go. Yes, it's really wonderful, Aizzah, to have you with us today, and we're really thrilled to have featured you as part of the program this year. So for today's discussion, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the film. And also just a little bit more about you and your background. You have a very interesting background, I must say.
Indeed.
Indeed. But I thought we could start out by talking about, you co-wrote this film with director Iman Zawari, and I wanted to find out, how you connected with Iman and how you came to collaborate on this project.
Yeah, so I was performing my one-woman show, which has a little bit of a scandalous title. It's called Dirty Packy Lingerie. I was performing it in New York City at the Cherry Lane Theater, and Iman is a Florida-based filmmaker. She just happened to be in town for her birthday. She saw the poster of like this woman in a hijab with a piece of lingerie next to her body, and she's like laughing into the sky. And so she wanted to see it. And so she came with her buddies who were on the trip with her. They saw the thing, and then afterwards she actually approached me, and it was a really interesting time because I'd been performing this one-woman show. I had just done it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is the largest theater festival in the world, in August. So it's like I did 25 shows in 25 days, no breaks. And I'd come back to New York. I was performing. This was in September. I was performing at the Cherry Lane, and I was thinking about, like, I was like, oh man, okay, so I did it at this huge festival, and it was like a 65-seat theater, and I was like, okay, well, I reached some people. We sold out some shows. It was great. And then I was like, how do I reach the masses? And I was just kind of thinking with the message, right? With the things that the show talks about, which is like issues of identity, sexuality, racial profiling, bullying, religion versus culture as it pertains to the American Muslim female identity. I was like, how do I reach more people with this? And so when Iman approached me and she was like, do you want to turn this into a feature film? I was like, yes, I do. Because, I think in the UK, pop culture and whatever, or culture, is actually shaped by theater, a lot of it. But in America, that's not the case. Here, it's pop culture, and it is like film, TV now, more recently, or music, right? So I'm pretty tone deaf. So I was like, it's not going to be music for me. So it has to be film. This was 8 years ago. This was 8 years ago. And so in 2014, we started writing. And and then here we are, 8 years later. We're on this amazing tour with Americanish right now. We're playing at 25 some festivals, actually, which is amazing, between now and November.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's fantastic. I know you're at a festival right now as we
Yes, I'm in Savannah, which I've never been. It's pretty amazing. It's a great time.
It sounds beautiful. So, following up on that, and I know you probably had inspiration from your play, but, I really wanted to talk a little bit about how you and Iman developed the characters, especially the three lead women in the film, whether that was sort of inspired by personal experience or women that you know in your lives. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, a lot of it is like, as a writer, when you're writing, you're putting yourself in the writing, even if it's a character, even if I'm writing like a male character or whatever, I'm always like, you're writing from your own perspective, right? So in terms of the women, for sure, I mean, they are kind of shaped by who we are. Iman is Egyptian American, I'm Pakistani American. She's also like visibly Muslim. She wears a hijab, she covers her hair, I don't. So it was really important to us to kind of show the diversity of the American Muslim female identity that exists in the world, about like how people practice their religion and how the culture impacts that. And this is specifically through the, cultural lens of like Pakistani women, right? Yeah, so we definitely brought ourselves to that. And then, I come from a family of 3 girls. So there's me, my younger sister, and my older sister. And I think I just was always keenly aware as a young kid growing up in Mississippi that I was like, we're very different people. Like we belong to the same household, but we're all very different women. And when I look at the media, I almost never see that kind of depiction of Muslim women. It's always like a monolith. It's always like the battered, abused woman with no voice. And frankly, I don't know any Muslim women in America like that, right? Personally, I don't. That's not in my family. So I was like, how do I kind of bring these experiences to light? And that's where the characters in Americanish come from.
Yeah, that reads, and I think that that's sort of my follow-up question was really around your presentation of the sort of the diversity of experience of Pakistani American women, and also the multifaceted nature of cultural identity, and there's a lot of contrasts between the characters and their values and ideals, and I think you just talked a little bit about it, but I was wondering if there's a little bit more to why it's so important to present this really diverse perspective on this community.
Yeah, well, because I mean, I think the stories that are told about Muslim women are almost never told by Muslim women. So that's sort of the first thing, right? When you're telling a story of people that are usually othered, it's just like you're always telling the story from like this outside perspective, looking in. You're not actually, because these stories are never told by Muslim women, right? They're told by other people who are not Muslim women telling these stories. So they're just like looking in on this thing, like something they see. Like they'll see a woman walking down the street in a hijab and they're like, oh, let me write that story. What does she feel and think? Meanwhile, they've never actually talked to a Muslim woman. So they don't know what she feels or thinks. So I think it's so important for us as like women who actually live through these experiences on a daily basis. What does that look like? With all of our like heart, humor, and flaws. Like, what does it, just like three-dimensional people, what does that look like? And yeah, and also, it's so fascinating. While the stories are so specific, we were I think we were somewhere in the Midwest, maybe Ohio, and it was Ohio actually, now that I think about it. And there was at a screening, and afterwards there was a gentleman who came up to me, who was clearly an immigrant from India, and he said that he was like, thank you so much for showing that story of like the Sam character, a woman in corporate America trying to climb up a corporate ladder that's not really built for her, right? And he said he works in tech, and he really related to that story because he feels like he also isn't seen in those spaces. So it's really interesting. Like, while for me, like I was telling a very specific story from the female perspective, I think the story resonates with even men, who feel like sometimes there's not like they don't exist in these spaces, or they're not being seen in these spaces.
Yeah, and I think that resonates not just across gender, but also across cultures, because there's so many communities of color and just more minority communities in the United States that are othered in this way, that are presented in a flat perspective, or that are stereotyped, that aren't seen, in this space. And I think that the culture is shifting, but it's not enough yet.
I think stories of women in general are not seen, right? Even like white women's stories are not really seen that how often. I mean, it's just now there's a big push to tell like female stories and women's stories, but like forever, if you look at the films of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, women were just like decorative things, they would say like one or two lines, and that's all they would have to do. So for me, it's so important to kind of center these stories as the women being the protagonists. Yeah, and sharing their experiences.
Yeah, definitely agree. So I wanted to, moving to a little bit like of your background. I mean, you're born in Saudi Arabia, raised in Mississippi, and then moved to New York, and then also you were trained as a microbiologist, and then worked in tech before transitioning to the arts. I wanted to ask you just a little bit about maybe how your personal experience has shaped, especially down maybe in Mississippi, has shaped your work, and then also what was the spark that made you transition from tech into film and arts? Yeah,
great question. So I think first of all, like just growing up in the South in like this very like Bible Belt, like very Southern kind of way, was really interesting. And coming from Saudi Arabia, because really, believe it or not, they're kind of the same. So in a lot of ways, those two places were kind of very similar. So it wasn't a huge change. It was a bit of a change. And I think it's just for me, like, even in Saudi Arabia, so my parents aren't from there. I was born there. I was raised there partially. Before we moved, my parents are from very diverse kind of backgrounds. Like my dad was born in India, my mom was born in Kashmir, and then their families migrated to Pakistan when they were babies. They were, and in their 20s, they moved to Saudi Arabia. So, after they got married and stuff. So, it just is, and I think growing up in Saudi Arabia too, I always felt othered. Because like the Saudis make sure that you don't belong there. They have really strict rules around citizenship and who gets to be Saudi in those spaces, because you have to have, your father has to be Saudi, not your mother. Your father has to be, in order to be, I don't know if this rule has changed, but this was the case when I was younger. And then there's all these other strict guidelines and stuff around. So I was not considered a citizen in Saudi Arabia, even though I was born there. So it was like I always felt like the other. And then we went to this like Pakistani American school where we were like learning English and Urdu, and like Arabic was taught as like a side language. So I wasn't really embedded in the society in a way there. I kind of had a very like American upbringing in Saudi Arabia, because we would like watch all the American TV shows, and then we would go to the Tehran campus. My dad worked out for Aramco, so the campus was like a city all on its own where women could drive. And like you could wear shorts, and there was swimming, and there were libraries, and you could do whatever, you could walk around, and we couldn't do that actually living in Al Khobar, which is where I grew up. So because that was like the Saudi government had jurisdiction there, but on the campus they didn't. So it was American, so you could do whatever. So it was like a really interesting way, but I still never felt like I quite belonged. And when we moved to Mississippi, I also kind of felt like I really didn't belong. And honestly, it wasn't until I came to New York that I felt like, oh, this is home. These are my people. Because I think New York is one of those places you can come from anywhere and just kind of find your tribe. you know, because everyone there is from some other place, and that works. Yeah. So sorry, there was a second part to your question, which I've already forgotten.
Yeah, my question was sort of, that's a very diverse personal experience that I can imagine just informs a lot of your work. But then also I was wondering, what made you transition from tech world to the arts?
Yeah, so it wasn't until I landed at Google that I realized I didn't kind of want to do the tech stuff. And it wasn't like what, my calling was maybe in life. Like it's interesting, like, and it's also tricky because I was always good at science. I was always good at math. I was good at computers. So I have like all these degrees and this background and with all this stuff. And then I ended up at Google and I didn't love it. And I felt like something was really missing. And the environment at Google is like incredibly creative. So I had like colleagues who were like, professional ballroom dancers who were now like working at Google. Somebody was like a chef from like a Michelin star chef from like somewhere in France who was now working at Google, like teaching like training classes or something, like not being a chef at Google, doing something completely different. There was like a guy who had written the New York Times bestseller book who was now working as a lawyer at Google. So it was a very kind of a creative, diverse environment. And I remember there was a group of engineers who got together and were like, let's go take flying trapeze lessons. And I was like, okay. And so I did it. And I'm super scared of heights also. And I was like dying the whole time. But I was like, I'm going to do this 3 times because I don't give up and I'm going to conquer my fear. And I never conquered the fear, but I did it 3 times. And then they were like, okay, let's take a 12-week class. We're going to learn flying trapeze. I was like, no, thank you. Not for me. But then I was like, I do need a creative outlet because I love this kind of stuff. And I kind of, at that point, turned to acting for fun. I took a class at NYU, which kind of like reignited my love of acting, which I had as a young kid in Mississippi, but I never knew how to quite cultivate that because, again, it goes back to representation. I had never seen anyone who looked like me on TV, and so I was like, I don't know how to make a career out of this. Like, I know how to get a degree in tech and how to get a job in tech and how to climb up that ladder and how to like get promoted and like how to do those things. But I was like, there's a clear path, but I didn't know how to be an artist. There was no clear path. So I kind of turned to acting and then slowly kind of worked my way into it. I just took a lot of classes, took a writing class. I did a conservatory at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was like a 2-year evening conservatory. That kind of led me to this writing class where I ended up developing the solo show that became Dirty Packy Lingerie with Matt Hoberman in New York City. And that kind of like, like writing my own work is what really led to a career for me. Because this was in 2011 and seriously, I would be like reading breakdowns and the roles would be like tall, leggy, blonde. And I'd be like, that is not this situation. It's not tall, leggy, blonde. So where is a role for me? And so I was like, I guess I'll create one, and that's kind of that's how I started.
That's amazing. And yeah, because it's just a lot of people, especially in acting, they do that. They do this from when they're very, very young.
Yeah, not like when they're a full-grown adult working at Google. No, yeah.
Yeah, no. But
I had friends who were like, "Aren't you too old for this? Like, don't you start when you're like 9?" I was like, "Okay, guys, I don't know." Like, I'm like, "It's okay. I'm like 24. It's not that old, but okay."
Yeah, it's not that old. It's not that old. And we can. I love the ability to career switch in that way. And I think now that you've built a career as an actress and a writer. Do you foresee like this is what you want for the future, or would you ever like go back to tech?
I think the tech door has definitely closed for me now. I am done with that world for sure. And so, but what is really helpful is kind of having that tech and like business background, because then I can apply, because really when you're a creator, you're just really an entrepreneur. You're running your own business. That's what I'm doing. So as like a creator, writer, actor, producer, also like a lot of my skills I used to use for like product management at Google are really what transfer and translate into producing, So yeah, so I'm totally like so grateful in a lot of ways that I did have that background. So it's like definitely a natural kind of a switch for me.
Yeah, definitely. I get that. It is, being a producer is being an entrepreneur, and it is really important to have those skills. So now that the success of Dirty Packy Lingerie and now Americanish, what I know it's probably too soon. You're still on tour for Americanish, but I'm just wondering what's next, or what do you see coming up next for you?
Yeah, so with Americanish, we're in conversations are happening right now. So hopefully we'll have a wider release sometime next year soon. So I'll be able to share that news with everyone. And then in terms of what's next for me is I'm just an actor too, you guys. So I'm touring right now with shows, and then when I go back in November, I actually have two TV shows that I'm shooting for the Indian markets. So they're like, yeah, TV shows that happen over there. So it's just kind of like this random, just as an actor, I've been hired. And then early next year, I've been hired to be in a feature film. And then in terms of writing my own stuff, I think it's really important for me to cultivate diverse female voices, and also diverse, Muslim female voices. It's very important. So I've been working with a group of ladies. They're all stand-up comics and comedy writers, we created this pilot, and we're just like working on getting that out into the world. That's sort of going to be what I'm in the process of editing that right now, and just excited to get it out.
That sounds wonderful. I'm really excited about that last pilot. That sounds really, really fantastic. Well, I don't want to keep us too long today, but I just want to really, thank you for joining us for this discussion. And for everyone, if you are watching this, and we'll be playing it after the screening, but if you are watching this, you should definitely check out, and you have not seen Americanish yet, please check out Americanish. We will be streaming this film from the 15th to 28th at HIFF, and Aizzah will be joining us in person. We're very excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
how could you not be excited?
It's very exciting. And along with Iman Zawari,
Yes.
the director, who will also be with us, and we'll have an in-person screening of Americanish and a Q&A, and we'll also have some really exciting panel discussion featuring Aizzah, as well as all of our other new 2021 New American Perspectives participants. So please join us for that. Thank you all for being with us today. And again, big mahalo to the Vilchick Foundation, our partner for this program. We really couldn't present this program without their support. A big thank you to all of our sponsors at HIFF, our HIFF Ohana, our board of directors, and you for watching today. So thank you again, Aizzah, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.